Hello and welcome to Michi Designs. So in today's tutorial, we're going to draft a basic trouser block, or you can call it women's pants trouser, precisely. So let's get started. The measurements needed for this tutorial are the waist measurement, the hip measurement, the crotch depth, the thigh measurement, the knee length, and the ankle measurement. The ankle measurement also serves as the full length of this trouser. So now we're going to start by marking 2 inches away from the margin line. That's the upper part of this pattern paper. I'm going to mark 2 inches from this upper part. We're going to mark it. So I'm going to mark it around the paper, 2 inches. So after marking the points, I'm going to connect with a horizontal line. So the reason why we're marking these 2 inches is because the back pattern is usually higher than the front pattern by 2 inches. So we're going to raise the back pattern by 2 inches to accommodate the hips. That's the reason for this 2 inches mark. So now after that, I'm going to mark the hip line. I'm using a hip line length of 10 inches and a crotch depth of 13 inches. This is a high waist trouser. If you're drafting a normal waist, please use a hip length of 8 inches and a crotch depth of 11 inches. But if you measure the person's crotch depth, you can use the person's crotch depth. If you don't know how to measure it, just ask the person to sit down with their back facing you. Then you place your tape on the waist on the back. You now measure from the waist there down to the seat where the person's hips is touching. That's how to get the crotch depth. So I'm labeling the lines now. So after that, the next thing I'm going to mark is the full length of this trouser. You can see my tape is starting from that 2 inches mark. So I'm going to measure from there down to the full length of this trouser. I'm using 40 inches as my full length. I'm using 40 inches. Then after marking the full length, the next thing is to get the knee length, and you can get the knee length by placing your tape on the crotch line. Please take note, from the crotch line you measure down to your full length. Whatever you get, I got 27 there. Then you divide it into 2 by getting the midpoint. You can see me folding my tape into 2. So if the midpoint there is 13.5. So on that midpoint, this is important, on that midpoint you go up again by 1 inch. You can see the midpoint is 13.5. Then I went up there by 1 inch, which is 12.5. That's what I marked. So that's how you get the knee length of your trouser. So I'm connecting the points there to connect my knee length. So after that, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my thigh measurement. I'm using a thigh measurement of 28 inches. Divided by 2 is 14 inches. Please take note that all measurements here are divided by 2 except for the hips and waist, which are divided by 4. So I divided that thigh by 2 to get 14 inches. Then I'm marking the midpoint of that 14 inches, which is 7 inches. I'm going to mark it from the full length down to the crotch line. The midpoint of that 14 inches, which is half of my thigh measurement, I'm getting the midpoint to mark it from the crotch line down to the full length. If you want to sew a dart to your trouser, you can extend this same line up to your waist, and then you mark your dart on the line. But I'm not sewing that to this trouser, so I'm just stopping at the crotch line. This is the midpoint of half of your thigh. Please take note. You're going to take your measurements on this point, on this midpoint. Okay, so now after getting this midpoint of half of my thigh measurement, the next thing I'm going to mark is quarter of my hips measurement, which is 10.5. My hips divided by 4, 10.5. And then I'm going to mark the same measurement on the waistline. I'm going to mark the same measurement on the waistline, the same 10.5. Then I'll connect with a straight line up to the waistline. Sorry, the camera did not capture that part of the waistline. Okay, you can see it now. That's the waistline. And then I'll take that line up. Then after that, I'm going to mark the quarter of my waist measurement, starting from that hip line is 8 inches. You can see my 8 inches is on that hip line. Then I'll mark it on this left side of the trouser. That's the quarter of my waist divided by 4. And then I'll use my hip cuff to connect it down to the hip line, from the waist to the hip. That's it there. So after that, the next thing I'm going to do is to draw out my crotch curve. I'm going to connect the curve from that thigh measurement, which is 14 inches, half of my thigh, down to the hip line with a curve. I'll curve it to the hip line. This is so easy. From the hip line there, where my hip measurement is, I'll curve it to the thigh measurement to get my crotch curve for the front block. Okay, so having done that, now the next thing is to mark out the knee measurement and the ankle measurement. So I'm using a knee measurement of 20 inches. You need to measure the person's knee, round knee, but standard knee measurement is about 20 inches, divided by 2 is 10. So you can see me marking 5 on each side of this line now. I marked 5 on each side to give me the 10 inches. Then on the ankle line too, I'm using a knee ankle length of measurement of 8 inches. I'm marking 4 on that line, that midpoint there. I'll mark 4 inches on each side of the line to get my ankle measurement. Standard ankle measurement is about between 8 and 9 inches. You can as well measure the person's ankle, but make sure you add about at least 1 inch is on your measurement. So I've connected those points together. Then I'm using my hip curve to turn it upside down to connect from the hip line down to the knee line. I connected the knee line to the ankle line with straight ruler. Then I'm using this hip curve to turn it upside down to connect to from the hip line down to the knee line. As you can see me doing. I'm just trying to get a perfect curve there. So you can see. Then on the other part of the trouser, you're going to use a pant curve now. We're going to use the pant curve to connect from the thigh measurement down to the knee line. We already connected with a straight line from the knee to the ankle. So from here, we're going to use the pant curve to connect from the knee. We curve it to the thigh measurement. I'm just trying to make sure my thigh measurement is correct there, 14 inches. That's half of my thigh. Then I'll connect it. And then we are done with the front pattern. This is just the end of the front block. So the next thing I'm going to do is to draft the back block. So from the upper part of the waist, we're going to add 1.5 inches down to the hip line for the back block. So we're going to extend. So I'm just showing you, this is the full front block. Sorry, that's our front block. And then we're going to now start with the back block by extending this from that hip line. We're going to add 1.5 inches on that waist there, that hip line connected to the waist. We're going to add 1.5 inch until down to the hip line and also connect with a straight line. So first of all, what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to extend the thigh measurement for the back, because the crotch curve for the back is longer than that of the front because of the hip. It needs to accommodate the hip. So the way to calculate this extension is by dividing this your thigh measurement, which is 14 inches. You divide it by 4. Whatever you get, I got 3.5 there. So I'm going to extend that thigh measurement there by 3.5. Which is what I already marked. And then this is the 1.5 inch I'm extending to get my back block from the front block. This is the easiest way to draft a trouser pattern. You don't need to draft a separate back pattern. You're just going to extend your front block to get your back block. So now, from this extension from waist to hip, I will now curve it. You can see the extension on the thigh there too, by 3.5, by dividing your 14 by half of your thigh measurement by 4. So I'm going to get the crotch curve for the back pattern now. From that hip line down to that extension, that extra 3.5, to get the back crotch curve. So now I'm extending the knee line by 2.5 down to the ankle length too for the back to get my back pattern. You know, we're drafting the back and the front in one single piece. I'm not drafting them separately. That's why I'm just doing this extension. This is where we're going to use our sewing allowance now. Our sewing allowance is already added to this measurement. That's why there's no sewing allowance at the back. You also use your pant cuff to connect to that extension, that crotch line there, to get the back, complete back. Then this upper part, the 2 inches that we left, I've raised it up there. You can see the back pattern, and then I'm just covering it down to the waist on that front pattern. So that 2 inches, you raise it up there, then you curve it down back to your normal waistline, and then the pattern is ready. The next thing is to cut it out. We have our front and back block trouser pattern ready now. Remember, I connected this upper part of the trouser with a pant cuff to the knee line like we did for the front, the one that's connecting to the crotch curve there down to the knee line. I used the pant cuff to do that. So now I'm cutting it out. I'm cutting out the back block first. By the time you cut it out, you place it on your fabric, cut out this block, 2 pieces of it for your back, and then you remove the back pattern from this block. Then you'll be left with only the front pattern. Then you can use it to cut out your front pattern on your fabric. You can see that extension up there to that 2 inches there. This is going to be on the center back, and then we're cutting off all the excesses. This is our hip. We're cutting out all the excesses. And then the pattern is ready. This is our trouser block pattern for both front and back block in one single piece. You can see how beautiful it looks. Okay, so now once you cut off your place your pattern on your fabric and cut your back 2 pieces, you will now remove the back. See the line that I followed there? You just cut it off and remove the back. You'll be left with only your front. You can see my label there, front and back. Here's the final look of the trouser. Please do well to subscribe to my channel. See you in my next tutorial. Bye.